This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. And the good news is, it's been 30 days since the Chicago Cubs hurt us. Cody Bellinger, Corey Freeman. I guess you could say I'm being Luke Stuckmeyer today, and Corey's being either me or Ryan. I don't know. For Halloween?
I'm not going to talk about Mizzou or Nick Madrigal, so I don't want to be Ryan. I can be Luke, probably.
Yeah, you got the glasses. I'm acting as Luke. Luke is not in today because it's Halloween and he wants to be with his family on Halloween, which is, big of him. Credit to him, I guess.
Pathetic.
Ryan's still not feeling great, so I hope he feels better. Big of me to say. Credit to me for giving him well wishes.
That's nice.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone. I see a few super chats already. Hit that like button, subscribe.
Super chats before we even got on the air.
I know. Credit to you guys. Credit to you that I'm about to read here in a second. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. Follow us on Twitter at CHGO Cubs, CHGO _Cubs, and Cody _CHGO, Corey _Cubs. I think I got it all right there. We're going to talk today about Cody Bellinger. We're doing more grades. It's unfortunately, again, I keep pointing this out this month. We're grading in October, and I don't want to be grading in October next year, right? I want to be grading in November next year.
Sure.
But we're going to continue with grades. We're doing Cody Bellinger and Jameson Taillon today.
Well, I think even though, doing grades isn't the most exciting, we'd rather be watching the playoffs. Like, getting reports of, Belly's contract, see Jameson Taillon posting his workouts. So there is, stuff to talk about. For sure. There absolutely is things to talk about.
Which is good because it has been kind of slow in Cubs land over these last couple weeks. But
yeah. But I keep saying to Brendan, though, when we're doing our shows, I almost kind of, look, the season's already over. They didn't make the playoffs. So, we don't have to, feel sad about that over and over and over again. We kind of did it. This offseason is going to be tough for people, Cody. Yeah. There's going to be a lot of rumors. There's a lot of consequence, right? And I keep saying to Brendan, we're going to get a tweet or something about Cody Bellinger every day. Mm-hmm. He visited with the Angels. He's talking with the Dodgers. And it's just going to poke at us every single day. So I'm not saying I enjoy the no playoff off season, but the stress is going to ratchet up when this World Series is over. And I just hope we're all ready for it.
Right. Before we get to the grading, I did want to bring this up. I tweeted this out from CHGO Cubs Twitter account today because it is Halloween. I asked the question, what is the scariest moment you've had as a Cubs fan? I think a lot of people automatically want to just go straight to Rajai Davis in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. But I tweeted the picture of Mark Pryor after he had that collision with Marcus Giles in 2003. I replied to it with my own account, my personal account with the Adam Greenberg, the guy who got hit by a pitch in his very first major league at bat. I don't think there's anything more scary and unfortunate. The guy never played in the major leagues ever again after that. Is there one for you?
Well, I mean, the Rajai Davis one is good because it was scary, but ultimately it worked out. It worked out, right? So it wasn't just truly bad.
Right. Well, and I didn't use Rajai Davis in that tweet specifically because I think most people just felt very deflated and just demoralized in that moment, not necessarily scared. I think everyone, in classic Cubs fan fashion, just kind of felt like, oh, here we go again. Yeah, it's happening again. That. Right? And so, when I think of scary moments, I'm thinking about, an injury or, just some sort of moment that just had you almost just, and freaking out.
Dubs in the chat has a one that I've heard a lot, The Jason Kipnis foul ball in Game 7 of the World Series in 2016,
that works.
which was a foul ball because obviously the Cubs go on to win that game and the 2016 World Series.
People forget that.
Yeah. I always say though, I was at that game and I was down the right field line. So after the game, Brendan, a bunch of people are like, "Oh man, that Kipnis foul ball." I'm like, "What are you guys talking about?" Because it's like right in front of me. So like to me, it was just a foul ball, and then I go and watch it on TV, and I'm like, "Oh, right." Like the way the camera pans back, you're like, "Oh, okay, I get what everybody's talking about." The first thing that came to mind, like there's obvious ones, right? But thinking of something that was scary was like when Kyle Hendricks got hit by that liner. The Giants series in 2016, because that was one of those moments. Yeah, Emily with a good one, like Schwarber's injury in Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Hendricks getting hit in that game was terrifying because that was one of those things where you felt like, look, as long as this team like plays and gets through, they're gonna win the title, right? Like, and you're just waiting for stuff to get in the way, bad luck, things like that, and that felt like it. Ultimately, he was fine. But yeah, and yes, Dubs, we are fixing the screen.
Yeah, we're having technical difficulties again today. I don't know what's going on in here in Studio B, but we're gonna get it figured out. So
the people on the podcast feed don't care.
Yeah, the people on the podcast feed don't care.
Yeah. They're just imagining what we look like anyway.
Obviously, the Schwarber injury I think is a good one because I do remember. Because that was at the very beginning of 2016.
Same deal, right?
Yeah. And in that moment, you're like, oh, no, like this team had all these expectations, and you just lost one of your best home run hitters with all this high ceiling and everything.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's one of those. I think I was reading the mentions of the tweet we sent from the CHGO Cubs Twitter account, Derek Lee's, like the wrist injury against, I think it was the Dodgers.
With Rafael Furcal.
Yeah, in like 2005. Like that, or I think it was 2006. It was like the year after he had like that MVP type season, I want to say. I can't remember. But like, it derailed like his entire year basically.
I mean, he was otherworldly in 05 and, then starts in 06 and that tanked that. So, I'll never forgive Rafael Furcal for that. I remember watching that live. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of them, unfortunately, right? Neil, Sammy getting hit in the head. Yeah. Like that. There's like baseball scary and there's like real life, like the Adam Greenberg thing. Like those are like real life scary. Like, oh, wow. Like that is legitimately terrifying for this person.
Right. So Casey says in the chat, Cody Hoyer this year. Yeah, that was, watching the video, I think I could only watch it that one time of the injury he sustained in AAA. So, yeah. Unfortunately, there are a lot of moments.
Yeah. Well, and scary right now because the YouTube audience can't see us.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, again, happy Halloween.
Christian is right. People do forget how good Derek Lee
was.
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Derek Lee in 2005 was out of control.
Yeah. Didn't Pujols end up winning MVP that year?
I believe so, yeah. Well, and he was, also out of control. But when they ask those questions of, like, if you could insert any former Cub, my answer is almost always like 05 Derek Lee. Like I don't think it's the most valuable season in Cubs history, but just especially in the years post Rizzo where you need a first baseman, like to put up those numbers. I mean, absurd. He was absurd.
Yeah, he was a power hitter / professional hitter. Like he just found a way to get on base, and he also was one of their best power hitters that year.
Great on defense,
and he was a great defensive first baseman.
Got in a fight one point.
Yeah,
We're
talking about 2005.
It would have been funny if when we had come back, like you and I had switched outfits and see if like people noticed.
Right?
I think we're back on YouTube here.
Yes, Barb, we are live. We are now live. We've been live actually. I was getting ready to say we're talking about 2005 Derek Lee, which I did not expect to be doing today, but you mentioned great on defense, power hitter, professional hitter. That's just like Cody Bellinger, except he plays the outfield. But he plays some first base for the Cubs a lot this year too, right? Especially down the stretch. We're gonna grade him. I guess should we start with the grading, or do we want to start with like some of the articles that have come out the last day?
I think we can start with the grade because I think some of the bigger discussion I think will probably take more time.
Okay.
And I think we both gave him the same grade, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy here.
It's easy, yeah.
It's an A. Like, he was the best offensive player on the team, and you can argue that he was one of the best defensive players on the team, especially in the outfield. Dansby and Nico up the middle at second and short, obviously, they were probably the best, middle infield tandem, but Bellinger being able to play center field the way he did on top of how he played first base you can't even describe the value that comes with. And he came into a year where there weren't really any expectations. You were hoping a change of scenery was going to, help him get back to half of what he was when he was an MVP type player. And he basically ended up giving you almost an MVP type season. If he doesn't miss like a month, maybe he's in that MVP conversation with Acuna and Mookie Betts at the end of the year. And the only reason I say that is because of him, the Cubs were, not only did the Cubs not sell at the deadline, but they won 83 games. He is a massive reason to why they were even in the playoff conversation.
Absolutely.
Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was a big part. So, 307 batting average, 356 on base, 525 slug, 134 weighted runs created plus, 26 homers, 15.6% strikeout rate, 20 stolen bases. He did all that after two combined seasons before coming into this year. He had hit 193, 256, 355 in 900 plate appearances between 2021 and 2022. That's like night and day, like what he was those 2 years compared to this year. So I don't want to take away anything else you can say about it, but like
I think he was
great.
Yeah, I mean, he was just one of the easier ones to grade. I don't really know what else you would give him. I think like with anyone, like an A+ is basically impossible, I think. And he wasn't as good down the stretch, right? He did have some stretches where he was not quite
the power
that
kind of
same
left
hitter.
Yeah, he didn't really even have the power in the first half of the year. Like he had massive July and August, right?
I think it's an interesting conversation when we start talking about bringing him back and what that contract looks like, which we'll get into in a second here. But I think more than anything, like he gave you a 134 WRC plus. He played really good defense in center field. He played really good defense at first base, which is stuff that you knew he could do when you signed him. But at the same time, like you didn't necessarily know that it was going to be so important, right? The Cubs needed those innings at first base, right? Like they needed them bad. And really until Tauchman took off, like they needed Cody to be that versatile, and they ended up using his versatility a lot. And that has a ton of value. He was a great hitter for this team. I see Collada in the chat, he couldn't carry him to the title. And again, like he was
gave
not
him a B+ though. I'll give him credit for going.
He wasn't as good down the stretch there, right? Yeah. But he was, nobody's the entire reason that they're in that position. But the way that he played over the course of the summer and, when he was red hot is a huge, top 2 or 3 reason, right? That they were even in that race to begin with. We always said, when a player signs a prove-it deal like he did last year, coming off injury, he signs for, a relatively small amount of money, an offer that's around, the what he could get at a qualifying offer anyway, right? Similar value for 1 year. He's trying to prove it. His agent is hoping he proves it, and the Cubs hope he proves it. It worked out for everyone basically as well as those things can possibly work out. So I think it's difficult to give him anything other than an A.
Right.
An A+, he would have had to be, 950 OPS guy, right? Like they make the playoffs and it's all because of him or something like that, right?
Right.
And I think Casey makes a good point in our YouTube chat. We're fixing the technical difficulties as we go. It's
been a struggle bus here in Studio B this week so far. Continue. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
You were easy.
Casey said his approach changed the culture of the team during the winning streak in the summer of Mike Tauchman. And I mean, I think Belly being that presence in the middle of the lineup was a really big part of when the team flipped the script, right? Because the team needed to play a certain way in those last couple weeks leading up to the deadline. And, you know, they have a lot of really good players. They have a lot of guys with a ton of experience, but you needed that kind of like, who's the star here? Who's carrying this? Who's like the lightning rod in all of this? And it was Cody Bellinger. So I think it's a pretty obvious A, and I think that carries us, you know, nicely into the conversation of how important it is to keep him, but also what's the proper value to keep him. And, you know, like I said, when we were talking about the offseason, it's going to be very interesting, right? Because I think especially if you start to hear those rumors that teams are interested in, you know, massive contracts for him, it's one of those areas where we've seen Jed in this front office have some trepidation with that type of stuff. And I think there's a legitimate, as with everybody, right? There is a proper value on Cody Bellinger. And I think the only thing, I've said it the whole time, right? I'm not changing my opinion. Don't take my words out of context. They got to bring him back. He's a huge piece to this offseason. You need him plus for this offense, right? Absolutely. You need him plus another star in this lineup. That being said, though, right, I don't want the Cubs fan base to overvalue him, right? Like and he's not. I'm making this up. But if Boris was like, we want 10 years, $300 million, like, that's not a good idea, right? Like, for as much as we loved him and for how important he was and how important he seems to this offseason, there is a proper value there. And you just have to hope that, you know, the Yankees or somebody else don't get crazy with it, because I don't think Jed's going to. We've just seen that in the past.
Right. Based off what you, like that, you know, the example, it's not real, but the example that you said about Boris, this is from an article from The Athletic that I think came out yesterday or maybe the day before. And I read it on MLB Trade Rumors, but it's crediting The Athletic on this. And it basically, it says that Bellinger, or that Boris and Bellinger they're preparing to take negotiations deep into the offseason as they maintain interest in re-signing him, with the negotiations expected to last into the new year, barring an outlandish deal. So, yeah, if a team were to offer him 10 years, $300 million, maybe he signs before the new year. But I don't think anyone's going to do anything like that. And to me, like, I don't think anyone's going to go over 220 if like a 7-8 year deal worth 220. I don't think anyone will go over that. But I think that if someone were to offer something like that, maybe he would sign. But it's interesting hearing like that, like from that article, them thinking that this is going to go deep into the offseason.
Yeah.
All things considered about how last offseason, it felt like guys were signing in December and most of the big guys were off the market, you know, late November, most of December, you know what I mean? So I'm interested to see how that all plays out.
It does make sense, because I think he's a tricky, you know, which is part of what we're talking about. Like, I think it's an interesting case, right? And I think the reason that negotiations may take a while is because there's a lot to consider for him, and there's a lot to consider for these teams, right? Like, do you envision him playing center field? Do you envision him playing first base? Do you envision him doing both? Right? Certain teams are going to have different needs, right? The Cubs at this current moment, as currently constructed, would need him probably to do some of both, right? Until, you know, PCA gets comfortable and proves himself at the MLB level, right? Other teams may just be looking for a center fielder, and they're going to pay him as such. The other thing is, how do teams value a guy coming off a couple of down years, a guy that had some injuries and sort of reinvented himself to get back to better numbers, right? So I think that's going to be a lot of the discussion. Do certain teams look at him as a bona fide middle-of-the-order stud, or do they look at him as a really, really, really good, you know, sort of complementary piece in an offense, right? For the Cubs last year, he was the stud, right? But I think when we look at even some of these conversations
just
about
1 year after a couple bad years, right?
Right. But like when we look at, a guy like, that you see the trade rumors about Juan Soto, right? Like Juan Soto is a different level of hitter. If we're talking about like 2017 Cody Bellinger, sure. Yeah. But like the consistency with which Juan Soto has put up those elite numbers, it's a different territory, right? So like, do certain teams view Cody Bellinger's potential going back into that category, or do they view him more in, sort of that one tier below, right? Like, and I think that's going to be a big part of the type of contract that he gets, the type of teams that are looking at him, the years, all that other stuff. So,
right. Yeah, and I kind of agree that I think this is going to go deep in the offseason, because if Ohtani didn't get hurt, I think he's obviously the biggest name on the market, and he probably still is. It's just the fact that he isn't going to pitch next year, that price is coming down some, right? But as far as, you take him out of it, I mean, Cody Bellinger's the guy. He's the one that everyone's going to be clamoring over. So yeah. I'm right there with you, and I've been saying that I've been saying it since August that they need to bring this guy back. Like he was a big part of the team's success this year, and that's why to me he got an A, and that's why you can argue in some ways that in the Jed Hoyer era he might be the best, like the smartest decision that they've made. Signing Dansby was kind of like an automatic,
right?
But giving Bellinger the opportunity and the chance, to believe that they can fix him. We can sit here and criticize Jed for, the guy that we're going to talk about in the next segment, Jameson Taillon, but we can also give credit where, people criticize the Cubs for signing Bellinger to begin with.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he answered the call.
And it could have gone poorly, right? Like that was part of the risk, and I think it made all the sense in the world. But yeah, I mean, look, like the thing we've talked about so much is that whatever you necessarily believe about Cody Bellinger, if you lose him, that's just a lot of offense to replace, and I think especially you watch some of these playoffs, and you need guys that hit homers, right? And Cody's changed his game a little bit to be a more complete hitter, keep that K rate down. But especially as you get through these playoffs, you need those guys that can change a game in one swing. Yeah. And the Cubs have a lot of really good contact hitters, a lot of good line-to-line hitters that hit the gaps, run the bases well, things like that, but they don't necessarily just pump home runs, right? And you do need some of those guys. So if you lost one of your primary offensive weapons in that regard, you still have to replace that. And we still felt like the offense was too inconsistent in terms of scoring runs and providing run support to some of these pitchers. So where it goes without Bellinger, I don't really know, right? Yeah, that's a lot of movement, but at the same time, that's why I sort of preach a little bit of caution, right? Like if a team wants to get crazy with him, like I don't expect Jed. Jed has shown in his years as the president that he values intelligence, right? And I'm never defending
intelligent spending.
I'm never defending it. They should spend $500 million a year. As I always say, I'm a season ticket holder. I give them way too much money. I'm never defending them, right, in terms of not spending. I'm just telling you how it is, right? They value intelligent spending. And if a team wants to get stupid for Cody Bellinger, say the Yankees, right? The Yankees are down, right? They didn't make the playoffs. The vibes around them are not necessarily good. They might see some change in some of their staff and things like that. If they say, listen, we need a guy that is going to hit homers left-handed into that short porch. We need him. We have to get him. He's our guy. And they get crazy. We view it as Cody Bellinger or bust, right? Yeah. I don't think Jed Hoyer is going to, if other teams are willing to get a little silly with it. That's just how he's shown to operate as the president of this team, whether we like it or not. That's why they got Marcus Stroman, because the contract worked, right? And no one offered him a 9-year, crazy deal, right? It's the same with Cody Bellinger. They were able to get him on 1 year, prove it. He was coming off down years. Dansby Swanson, same thing, right? Other teams got nuts with those other shortstops, and Jed waited for the guy who's a contract he believes in, right? So, and to Michael Collada's point in our YouTube chat, like, Jed understands Ricketts' cheapness. Look, I
never changed.
Whether it's the Ricketts or whether it's from Jed or, as Barb says, Crane Kenny, like, they're three sides of a very similar coin, right?
Yeah.
If a coin can have three sides. But all I'm saying, I'm just preaching caution with the Bellinger thing, because we all view it as consequential to this offseason. But if somebody else goes nuts, like, the Cubs just have not in recent years shown a willingness to say, you know what, he's our guy. I don't care what it costs, right? Yeah. We're just going to keep putting up the paddle at the auction, right, until we win. That's not how they've operated.
Right.
So,
and I've said this before, that, like, I think people like Collada and other people who trash on Tom Ricketts a lot, the Ricketts family, it's like this organization is yet to give out a $200 million contract to anyone. Like, sure, Dansby Swanson, as far as wins above replacement, was the best shortstop that they signed that in year one of the, after that free agent class. But, we saw Trey Turner be great in the playoffs this year. Corey Seager he's not part of that free agent class, but the Cubs could have signed him 2 years ago. Bogarts was, solid for the Padres, even though they didn't make the playoffs. And, all four of them have been good players. And now we'll see how it all plays out again, but I genuinely think that people would let up a little bit if they would just pay the big money to someone. I'm not saying you should do that to Cody Bellinger. I'm just saying for someone. Speaking of, we're talking about, these contracts and stuff. Another story from The Athletic that came out today, actually, is from Jim Bowden. He predicts that Bellinger is going to get 6 years, $144 million. And I'm like, immediately, yes. Sign him immediately. Do I believe that's going to be it?
Can you reiterate to our audience who wrote the article?
Jim Bowden.
Okay.
Jim Bowden. Yeah.
Listen, my mother.
He wrote it.
My mother listens to every episode, and she taught me if I don't have anything nice to say, I shouldn't say anything at all. So I will do a workaround to that and just tell you, always remember who's putting the rumors out and writing the articles. That's what I would say. Not saying that can't possibly be what the contract is, but I would be more interested. How's this? I would be more interested in a projection from almost anyone else.
Yeah. Well, if you go through his article on The Athletic, he did this for the top 40 free agents. So Ohtani was number one, and he projected Ohtani to get 10 years, $477 million, with incentives and escalators that could take the deal to more than $500 million. So, that's another where I'm like, yes,
absolutely,
because.
So
before the injury, we were like, "Oh, this guy's getting $600 million." It's like, you know what I mean?
Our YouTube chat is asking who Jim Bowden is. He's a writer at The Athletic now. He was a former MLB front office executive, and former for a reason, I think. So that's.
He does say that the best fits for Bellinger, he does list the Cubs number one. I don't know if he did this in any type of order, but he lists the Cubs, Giants, Angels, Mariners, Guardians, Blue Jays, and the Yankees. So the Yankees are the only team there.
By the Guardians. I'm throwing a fit.
Seriously, yeah. Like the Giants, they've like missed out the last 2 years on a big prime free agent. So like they kind of scare me. The Mariners are a team that had high expectations this year and flopped. Down the stretch, especially the Blue Jays, they need a shakeup. I think they need to make a trade before they even consider signing Cody Bellinger personally. And the Yankees kind of give me the same vibes with the Blue Jays. Like, I just don't think Cody Bellinger is going to change what's going on there. Obviously, he would make their lineup better, but
I think
I'm just in.
I mean, look at 6 years. Look at that deal. If that's what it actually ended up being, you're doing that yesterday, today, tomorrow, every day, right? Cody Bellinger's 28. He'll start next season at 28 in like 7 months or something like that, right? So he'd be 34 by the time that led up. He's a versatile player. He plays multiple positions. He runs the bases well. He has power. He uses the entire field. You're doing that a million times over, right? Those numbers don't feel like they're in that restrictive territory, right? The worry would be, does anybody push that to 7, 8? Do they push that closer to 200 million, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying I don't think the value can be there, but I'm, obviously as always wondering if Jed would see the value there. But 140 something, you're doing that over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's risk, right? Like, that's the thing. And that's what's going to be so interesting about this. Like, he's coming off 2 bad years, right? And injuries really derailed it. But he came back and put it up. And, teams are going to have to ask themselves how much they believe in it. But I think the pedigree is there. The age is going to be there. So what? You're paying a 33-year-old Cody Bellinger. Who cares? Yeah. He'll be fine.
Exactly. To close this out, in July and August when this guy was going off, I sat around 5, 6 years, maybe 7, between 170, 180. I think that's fair. I think that's a great offer, somewhere in that range. We'll see what happens. Like, I think that
got to spend money to make money.
I do think that the team he ends up going to is going to end up getting, he's going to end up getting $200 million from at least. So will the Cubs go over that a little bit to bring back Bellinger? I think that they should. That's just me personally. So
yeah, there's only so many ways to get to where this team wants to be, right? And you have the money you have on the books. The luxury tax thresholds are what they are. I wish they would ignore them, but I think they'll pay attention at least to that top tier one when you start losing draft picks and stuff like that. Yeah. And I think I'm trying to see this. Rye Hill Shy Bulls in our YouTube chat, I think puts it correctly. Tough choices for the Cubs. The people that get paid the big bucks need to earn their money.
Agreed.
Like, and I've said that to Brendan a lot, right? Like, Brendan's kind of concerned about the luxury tax and the payroll and how does this all fit? They got some dead money, right? With, like Barnhart and Mancini and Smiley and stuff like that. But, Jed gets paid a lot of money. Figure it out. Yeah. Like, I don't have the answer for you, but like the team needs to get better. You have a certain amount of money. If you're limited by some of those thresholds, then you have a very particular amount of money. You got to figure it out. You have to make the team better. You know what I mean?
I agree. We're talking about Cody Bellinger getting bread. Well, you can get real bread too, thanks to us. Credit to us. Hero bread. Barb, I always see you in the chat telling people to get hero bread, and I absolutely agree because as my good friend Greg brags, I've heard him say this multiple times on CHGO Bears that it's soft and fluffy, and I would agree. I had some come in the mail recently, and it's really good. It's high in fiber. It's ultra low net carbs, 0 grams of sugar. It's the perfect bread for you if you're necessarily trying to lose weight, but like if you just want a better type of bread,
live a healthier lifestyle.
Live a healthier lifestyle. Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. This is the first time I'm doing this ad, and it's like a very open. So. Again, I just started using it or getting it recently, and I've loved it. They got, obviously bread, and then they have like tortillas and all kinds of different types, and it's good stuff. So right now, Hero Bread is offering the CHGO fam 10% off their first order. Just go to hero.co and use code CHGO to save on Hero Bread today. That's HERODOTCO to save 10% today.
Colada says great with grilled cheese.
There you go. I love a good grilled cheese, especially in the fall with like tomato soup.
It's snowing here in Chicago today.
Yeah, so it doesn't feel like fall.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing will hit like some Hero Bread, grilled cheese, and tomato soup.
And you know what else you can hit, Cody?
Boom.
Your bets on the CIRCA Sportsbook app. CIRCA Sportsbook app. Best new app to get your bets in. Games will strive to be a -110 split on the CIRCA Sports menu. Unlike many sports books which use -115 or -120 splits. CIRCA Sports keeps as little money as possible on large market bets like futures, especially compared to other books. CIRCA Sportsbook app has high app limits and transparency. CIRCA Sports does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit winning players. We encourage bettors to download and explore all sports betting apps available and compare the lines for each sportsbook. CIRCA has the best. CIRCA customer service. There are real people behind the CIRCA Sports brand who resolve issues in a timely fashion, unlike other books who use chatbots. All aspects of the app are being run by the same team that runs the main CIRCA Sportsbook at CIRCA Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. I know you and I have both been to the resort.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's
we're talking about
incredible.
the app, but if you get out to Vegas, you got to hit the resort.
You got to do it all.
Do it both. Yeah. Go to the resort, place your bets in the app.
Yeah.
And then you could just do it in person, but
Or
the app
just
is great.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Download the CIRCA Sports Illinois at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Also be on the lookout for CIRCA events, watch parties, and tailgates. If you or someone you know has a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyoureallywinning.com.
Everyone in the chat surprised that you didn't use that segue to do Sunnyside. And we don't decide what ads we're reading, but the chat knows. The chat knows.
They wanted the segue from bread to Sunnyside.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yeah.
But that, and they just know you, and I love that.
Sure.
So.
I'm the Sunnyside guy.
All right, so we just talked about Cody Bellinger in the first segment and how great he is.
Do you want to talk? I think we also wanted to talk about that. I think it was an article in The Athletic. I was reading a piece that I think Brett Taylor did over at Bleacher Nation, but kind of combining with what Sahadev had done, kind of looking just at, one of the things that's going to be interesting about Bellinger is, like, if you look at his baseball savant data, it's a little bluer, right, than it was maybe in his MVP season with the Dodgers. And they were asking some scouts, I think at The Athletic, about, what they thought about some. He was making more weak contact, right? But if you watch throughout the year, he was a very good two-strike hitter and very deliberate two-strike hitter. Yeah. Like, I think about a couple times where he poked the ball down the left field line, right, when the third baseman was playing off the line.
2 strikes, yes.
Right? And they were asking scouts, like, does it concern you if you're projecting him long-term that some of those numbers were down, right? And all of the scouts basically said, not really, like, he is doing this deliberately, right? Like, it's a skill to be able to change your approach like that. We saw that with Anthony Rizzo for many years, just an unbelievable two-strike hitter. You would see him choke up on the bat, a different hitter with 2 strikes. So that's, you and I were talking, like, weaker contact like that is harder to predict, right? You need bloops to fall. You need those line, when you try to go down the left field line, you need the third baseman to be playing off, right, or hit it away from him. It's not as you hit the ball out of the ballpark. It's very easy, right? Nobody can catch it. You got to run. It's great, right? When you're blooping hits or just trying to stay alive with 2 strikes, there's a little more luck involved, but that was part of the reason that he was able to lower that K rate down to 15.6%, right? It was 27 the year before. The year in 2022, it was 26.9 in 2021, right? Yeah. So the ability to lower your K rate is not an easy thing to do, and it does come at some cost, but that was one of the biggest hampers to Cody's game, was that he strikes out. He has the speed to turn bloops into hits, bleeders on the infield into hits, or, balls in the alley into doubles if they get away from the defense enough. So you got to put the ball in play, right? And he found a way to do that more. And so it's just it's a long-winded way of saying, like, that's going to be part of the calculus. Some people may look at the numbers and say, he was really good, but this was not 2017, 7-win, 160 WRC plus Cody Bellinger. Right. And I'm not paying him like that, right? And I don't necessarily think you should. But it's also to say that when you look at some of that stuff, that does not mean that this newer version of Cody Bellinger isn't extremely valuable. It's not the same guy that won the MVP in Los Angeles, but it's still a very valuable player, and you should pay him as such.
And that might be why Jim Bowden thinks 6 years, 144 is what he's going to get, because these scouts that you brought up from the article from The Athletic, they're one scout they point out suggested that his weighted runs created plus could be, between 115 to 120 over the next handful of years. Like, he'd be a very productive player, but again, not 2017 through 2019 Cody Bellinger, who, was unworldly, looked like...
I kept saying 2017, 2019 is when he won the MVP.
Yeah, whatever. He was... This is like first 3 years of his career. He was unreal. And so that's why, to me, I feel like if the Cubs can get him at like between 170 and 180, I think I think we can all sit here and be really happy with that. And I would go up to 220 if these other chips that they're trying to do to make the team better don't say Juan Soto gets traded but not to the Cubs.
Right.
These chips fall off the board and you're like, shit, what do? We have to make this team better. And if it gets into that point where you are kind of desperate, I hope it doesn't happen that way. But just saying, then yeah, I feel like the Cubs will get a little bit more desperate and finally do what I've been asking them to do and pay a guy over $200 million.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at, so like 2017 and 2018 were sort of similar if you're looking at like WRC plus to 2023. But again, he was a different player. 2017, 138 WRC plus, but he has an 11% walk rate and a almost 27% K rate, right? So it's a very different player than we just saw.
Right.
In 2023, he had a 134 WRC plus, so similar overall offensive output,
right,
relative to the rest of the league, right? But he walked less in 2023 and struck out literally like 12% less. So just a very different player. So I think that's, as we were talking about, part of why his market might take a while to develop, because it's a mystery how teams look at this, right? Like, do they think that kind of 2017, 2018, 2023 can be kind of similar? Maybe it's like a 125 to 135 WRC plus player. Do teams think he can get back to 2019 and be a 7-win player again, right? Like,
right.
I don't know. But he's changed his game to get back to better form, and it's going to be interesting to see how teams view that future, right? So we'll see. It's going to be interesting to see how the Cubs view that future, right? Like, they were obviously, Dustin Kelly is someone he had worked with before in LA and was here with the Cubs in 2023. Like, I think they were a big part of getting him back to this point. But when you're talking contracts and values, and especially with Scott Boras, like, they're going to, I think the Cubs may have a better idea than anyone of, like, what do we think the potential is here, right? And, like, who is this new version of Cody Bellinger, and who do we see him being into his early 30s? And we're going to see in this offseason if other teams have a different kind of feeling on that. Because if somebody thinks they can get him back to 2019 and a 7-win player, I'm like, sure, that's not the Cubs, right? And I don't think they're going to pay him like that.
Yeah.
But if they want to be paid like that and somebody's willing to, good.
Yeah. Again, it's going to be very fun to watch it play out. Hopefully it plays out the way we all want it to.
Also, Luke is in the chat.
Luke is in the chat. He says it's an absolute blizzard in Arlington Heights. He's also giving a shit for not dressing up today. Luke, I did say when I walked in the office that if someone had some readers to put on, I would put them on and then hold my phone, like put my text on my phone so big to where I can read it better. And then I'd have to change my shoes to give me some like New Balances or something. Then I really could have been you. But no one offered me this, so yeah, I don't know. So, what else? What else is going on in the chat? There's a lot of
some more Morel stuff.
Yeah, like everyone's all over the place in the chat today.
Yeah, it's okay.
Which is normal. We appreciate y'all for being here. Hit the like button. 82 people watching. Is that what I said? 62, 67, whatever. Yeah, I don't know how much more we can harp down on this related to Bellinger, but I felt like it was very healthy. So, you know what also is healthy, Corey?
Sunnyside? No.
That is healthy,
Oh.
but Goose Island is healthy to me. It's my favorite beer in the summer. It's my favorite beer in the fall, winter, spring. It's supported by CHGO, supported by Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer since 1988. They got the roster, the beer roster, Oktoberfest. It is, the fall. This is the best time to get it here on Halloween. They got the Beer Hug family. Tropical is my favorite. 312 wheat ale, and of course a full pocket pilsner, which is my favorite during the summer, especially.
312 is my favorite. 312 is the
Corey
best.
like the
man.
312. 312 is good. I do like it.
Same.
Yeah?
It's classic. I'm not a big IPA person though, so that's why I go for the 312.
There you go. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have our different taste buds, right? So, we got the last Bears tailgate coming up against Carolina. I don't remember. What is it? November 9th. So here in a few weeks. Obviously, people come because they like us. They like CHGO Bears guys. They like the Bears, but also because we have Goose Island there. So that's the biggest reason why they come. We always have two huge, tubs? Is that what we call them?
Like these metal huge containers.
Yeah. And it's always full of Goose Island. So come check out the tailgate with us and drink some Goose Island with us. Grab Ultra Fresh Brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
That wasn't your best segue.
I know.
It really wasn't.
Listen.
Luke is in the chat, so
No, that's fair.
You might have got
It's
nervous.
going to be very hard for me to ever live up to anything that is Luke Stuckmeyer.
Luke also used the word daddy in the chat, which I don't like. So I'm going to move on from that. Are you in the market for a new vehicle? If you are, then we have some great news for you. Ray, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram in Fox Lake have joined the CHGO team. At Ray CDJR, you will always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest inventories and find unforgettable savings. And right now, during Ram Power Days at Ray CDJR, only in Fox Lake, you'll be able to secure 0% financing or 17% off new Ram models. But that is not all. Now through October 31st, explore their newly renovated showroom and take advantage of limited time 7-year anniversary savings. You got to get there today. That's today. So if you're in the market, you got to get to Ray CDJR in Fox Lake only. So if you're in the market for a new vehicle, then you have to check out the team at Ray, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram, because they are the only team we recommend. Visit them today on Route 12 in Fox Lake. For more information, visit Ray CDJR in Fox Lake or raycdjr.com today. Serving the community since 1963.
Since 1963. Okay, so we got about 9-10 minutes left, Sarah, right?
We can cram Taillon in there.
I guess we can talk about Jameson Taillon. I guess I tried to do it,
2023 Taillon only deserves 10 minutes. Hopefully
right.
2024 deserves a whole episode.
Yeah,
So.
I appreciate you for saving me from going into it in the last segment, because I was going to, because just how we planned it out. But then you wanted to talk about Bellinger more. I was like, okay, you don't have to pull mine.
I think the Bellinger one is just more important. It informs a lot of this offseason, and I think, you can kind of just tell, just the way people talk about it. I don't think people have a warped view of him as a player or anything, but when it, and I feel this way too. I've called it a linchpin of the offseason a million times. It's very important, but that doesn't mean the front office views it that, so it's just important before. I don't want everybody to get their hopes up and then act, the world is ending if he signs somewhere else. It might be. You know what I mean? But you got, got to let Jed cook. You don't have to like the meal he serves, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. So Jameson Taillon, we were gonna have to talk about him at some point. I see my guy Mike Dubs gives him a C+. Christian's giving him a D. Barb's giving him a B. This might be more different than I expected.
I'll just start with I'm giving him a D-. All right.
Yeah, I went D.
All right. So I'm giving him a D- because outside of September, he just wasn't good this year, man. Like it's as simple as that. You want me to say positives about him first? Okay. He was healthy. He gave you 30 starts. But it was his lowest F4 of his career outside of 2019 when he only made 7 starts, 4.84 earned run average in 154 innings. When I mean 30 starts, he actually made 29. My bad. I'm basing this off the fact that he just signed a 4-year, $68 million contract.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be the Cubs, second or third best pitcher. Now, I think the Cubs easily make the playoffs if Taillon wasn't so bad in the first half of the year. He was better in the second half. I'll give him that start he had at New York was great.
Yeah.
And then after that, he was better, but he still just wasn't. I felt like you still didn't really feel like you were comfortable with him out there. September was the only month where I was like, where has this been all season?
Yeah.
And he was legitimately one of the only few good things about September.
Yeah.
But he was just so bad for most of the season outside of September that it's hard for me to give him a pass for a bunch of stuff. Like there were so many starts where he went in there and when you looked at the lineup or whatever for that day and you saw Jameson Taillon starting, we're losing this game.
It was an L, yeah.
Right? And you knew it. You felt it in your heart and soul that they were going to lose that day. And there were some days that they didn't because the offense showed up that day, but he just wasn't good, man.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I'm not optimistic that he can have a better year next year. Like he posted that video on Twitter yesterday, working out or whatever, talking about how he's going to try, how he's going to be better next year and all this. And I can get up for a guy like that. He's an easy guy to like. It's not like he's Milton Bradley and just a bad dude.
Right.
He just wasn't good. That, as simple as that. He just was not good at baseball this year. And I'm happy that we saw what we saw in September, but he just did not pitch well enough to keep the Cubs in games more often than not.
Yeah. I think, he's a case, obviously, there isn't a real scale on these grades, right? And I do like Evil Wax 73's comment. I'll add that into my own in a second here. But,
right.
You have to, for me giving this grade, I'm always thinking of where a player is in their career, what their contract is. That stuff matters, right?
Yeah.
So Taillon had, and I didn't even believe this until I knew he was better in the second half. He had a 3.7 ERA in the second half, right? Down the stretch, as other guys were fading, Stroman was hurt, things like that. Taillon had some good starts.
Yeah.
He had starts in series where everybody else was bad, and he was the only decent start.
Yeah.
That being said, and again, I would agree with EvoWax73 in our YouTube chat. It was his first year on a new team. They did tinker with him, right? Yeah. He had a great attitude. He always took accountability in the press conferences, which some people won't care about, but no excuses, and he owned up to everything. I go with the D because he signed a relatively big deal, and they needed him to be anything but what he was in that first half. What did they lose? His first 11 starts? Yeah. He didn't take the L in all those starts, but they lost basically every game he took the mound in the first half. And when you sign a guy to be kind of the anchor of your rotation, they didn't sign him to be the ace. They signed him to be a dependable guy who's going to eat innings and help you win ball games, which he did in the second half. But part of the reason that they had to make that mad scramble before the deadline and literally win every game they played, right, was because of Jameson Taillon, because he did not pitch winnable games in that first half. There were way too many games where the game was basically over by the second or third inning with the way that he was pitching. So I think Zoff Anonymous, I appreciate that. Now... That being said, Zoff Anonymous gives me a B for graduating from the University of Michigan without becoming an a-hole. Depends who you ask on that.
Credit to you, I guess.
Yeah, it depends who you ask. If we did an episode about the sign stealing stuff, you might feel differently about me. I can make a lot of excuses when it's my team that's doing stuff that's getting them in trouble. But I appreciate that. Go Blue. I think Taillon, And Brendan talked about this a lot when he would dig into the pitching stuff and really try to figure out what was going on. And I remember like all the time he would just be like, he doesn't know where some of this stuff is going. Like his fastball is moving so much in I think one horizontal direction or another. Brendan has a graph. I don't know if you want to know.
Of course he has a graph.
And I don't mean that to say it's not Taillon's fault, but to Evil Wax's point, like they did tinker with him. They did try to add new pitches, and it messed him up.
Yeah.
So I give him a D because I think his performance in that first half really hampered this team. And I think had he not been that bad in some of those starts, the approach to the deadline is different. You kind of know that they're buying a little earlier. Things are maybe just a little different. I give him a ton of credit for the way that he battled in the second half and, you know, came through that strong and pitched well. And I think when you look to the next 3 years of that contract, I really do have every belief that he can get back to being the type of pitcher he was in New York and through the rest of his career. I understand that there are going to be people who are not believers in that. They just don't trust him anymore. But what I did take away from, you know, when Brendan talked about it or wrote about it, or, you know, when Ryan talked to Jameson or other people talk, I believe that it's a fixable issue, right? He tinkered with some stuff and it affected his command and understanding and like the feel of where his pitches were going, right?
Yeah.
I think you can fix that. It's not easy, but as we talked about, doing that in June it's too hard, right? You only have like a bullpen or a side session between starts, and to overhaul your whole thing that you just spent an off season doing is not easy. So they have their work cut out for him, but I think he can get there, and I think that's actually a rather important piece for the rotation next year.
Right.
I don't think he's going to be the ace. I don't think he's going to be in the Cy Young race, but I do genuinely believe that he can be the person that they signed him to be, which he looked a lot more of
In September.
in the second half there. Even if
Mostly the second half.
Even if it still wasn't super like predictable, right? Like in terms of his stuff and all that. But I think again, like you can't lose, the team can't lose your first like 11 starts in the first half in a season where it really came down to the day as to whether they were buying or selling. I can't give you a better grade than that when that's kind of how it starts. But I think the understanding of it and future projection is important to consider. Right. At this point, the season's over. They didn't make the playoffs. It doesn't. He gets a D. His first year's over. We have seen even just pitchers, right, let alone players on bigger contracts for this team several times in recent years just bounce back after that first year, make adjustments, and really be worth that contract. And I think he'll get there.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I don't believe that he can be better next year. I saw Barb's comment saying that we complain about the ownership now spending money, but then when they do, they complain when the Cubs don't spend and complain when they do. I don't get it. I think she's relating that to what I said about Taillon. I was happy that they signed Taillon because I really did think that they could unlock that second overall pick potential. And Evil Wax, he had a great point that you read that, that they tinkered with what he was doing and, whatever. Like it didn't work out in the first half of the year, right? But I'm just giving you exactly what happened. For most of the season, he just wasn't good.
Sure.
And I hope and pray that he's better next year because they're going to need him to be next year because he's going to be in the rotation. And we're talking about signing Yamamoto. And, if they sign him, then you have him, Steele, Taillon, Hendricks if they pick up the option, and Stroman. That's 5 guys. And you still have Jordan Wicks, right? Like, a lot of things have to happen. And I don't know if they will sign the guy from Japan. I'm just saying that, like, if they want to add a high-end starter, if they do, they're taking Jordan Wicks out of the rotation because they're not going to take Taillon out of the rotation. You know what I mean? So he's got to be better. He knows he's got to be better. I like seeing the video he posted yesterday, and I'm optimistic about him being better next year, right? So at the end of the day, that's basically it to me. Like, I'm not like some pitching guru like Brennan is or anything like that, but
He just simply has to be better. And I'm optimistic because he was better down the stretch. He did pitch well in games that the Cubs absolutely needed.
When I think they know what they need to fix. It's not something where it's like this confounding problem of like, why is he getting hit? We know why he was getting hit. The ball was over the middle of the plate way too often.
He gave up too many homers to lefties. Yeah. And honestly, like, that was probably his biggest issue when he was bad, was that he gave up too many homers, especially the lefties. He would have starts where I feel like he was turning the corner. He would go like 3 innings and give up no runs, but then give up 5 runs the next inning. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was a very frustrating experience. The Jameson Taillon 2023 experience was not fun. So that's just what it is. So again, I hope he's better next year. Sarah, you showed the super chats, and we completely forgot to read them at the beginning of the show. I'm so sorry. This $4.99 from Chris. If the Rangers can spend $500 million in one offseason and they aren't a huge market team, then the Cubs can spend that money. I agree, Chris. And then Ricky, credit to Cody for being Cody for Halloween. $2. Thanks, Ricky. Anyway, sorry for waiting so long and reading those super chats. Completely forgot. I suck at being Luke Stuckmeyer.
No.
Big of you to say. Credit to you. Okay. We got a couple ads to read before we get out of here. So let's do that. Corey, how do you tell us about being a diehard? Because I know you love being a diehard.
Sure. Yeah. As always, we encourage you to visit allchgo.com and check out being a diehard member. As you guys know, we have podcasts and live shows on every team every day, post-game shows, and premium written content for members at allchgo.com. If you sign up, you get 20% off all events like the upcoming tailgate on November 9th that Cody just mentioned a moment ago, where the Goose Island will be flowing. Of course, you get a free shirt when you become a member. As you guys know from our guy Luke Stuckmeyer, we have dope merch at the CHGO Locker. You get access to the members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. And at our last tailgate, we have our last X Golf giveaway. X Golf will be giving away a $200 gift certificate to any of their Chicagoland locations. You can find the X Golf nearest you at playxgolf.com/Chicagoland. Of course, you have to be at the tailgate to win that. And if you become a diehard member, you get a discount on joining the tailgate. We'll have Bulls takeovers, Blackhawks takeovers, and hopefully next season the Cubs are worth doing some takeovers for ourselves like we did last summer with the Cubs and Sox series. So check out allchgo.com and sign up to become a diehard today.
Absolutely. Also, you can get fitted out with the best sports gear around with FOCO, hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in between. It's baseball season. Mentally, it can be baseball season in your head if you want. It's football season. It's basketball. Like, you can get anything at FOCO. Aloha shirts, straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need for a game. FOCO's donated a few of their awesome pieces. Obviously, we always point out Clark the Cub here. We got a Hayden Wisniewski one too, and a few more on the CHGO studio sets. So check them out, foco.com, or click the link in the description below. For all non-presale items, use promo code CHGO for 10% off. Okay, we made it through the show, and I didn't ruin everything. Credit to me. Okay. Thanks, Corey.
I mean, we could blame you for the camera going out. Do we know it wasn't your fault?
Perhaps. I don't know. Well, of
On
course,
cue.
and just on cue. Oh, we're back. Just like that. Wow. That was wild how that just happened.
Let's get out of here.
Yeah, we're going to get out of here.
Folks.
We'll be back tomorrow, live 120. Luke will be back. Hopefully, Ryan will be back. Ryan was supposed to be back today, but he was sick again, so hopefully he is feeling better. Like I said at the beginning of the show, credit to me. So yeah, hit the like on your way out. Subscribe to CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Appreciate all the support as always, guys. And we will talk to you tomorrow. Vlad W.
We all silly like the mayor.